What makes atheists believe in God? Well, evidence mostly, but since the religious have none of that, they have to spin things a different way in hopes that nobody thinks about it too hard. So here we go with an article that asks what makes hard atheists believe in God and why the religious are completely out of their element. Frederick Heidemann wrote an article for Word on Fire, a religious blog, where he purports to explain how to convert atheists to Christianity. And the problem is, he's only talking about the lowest of the low-hanging fruit, just like all apologists do. Because they have nothing to present to the rest of us. They have nothing intelligent to say. And this is just one more example of religion wishing it could change people's minds, but having to be satisfied with the very, very few who don't ask too many questions and who really don't think about things very hard. And they are really happy about these very few converts while their own side floods out of the churches. So, let's see how silly this whole thing really is. The first claim is the witness of intelligent believers. And I already know where this is going to go wrong. We start off with, many of those adhering to the rigid school of atheism think that intelligent believer is a contradiction in terms. Thankfully, absurd positions are easy to dispel. All one has to do is point to the battery of famed minds who were also believers to debunk it. The problem here is that the religious are being absurdly simplistic. You can be very intelligent in some things and downright stupid in others. Intelligence is not a single data point. It's a continuum. Just because theist A was a brilliant scientist, that doesn't mean they know everything there is to know when it comes to cooking or fishing or, in this case, theology. And the funniest thing about these lists, and this comes up all the time, is how old most of the names on it really are. If you look at the list he provides here, not a single one of them lived in the 20th century. It's really pretty absurd. Then they pretend, according to the article, it's a poor excuse since scientific advancements over the past 400 years have not substantially changed the core arguments for or against belief in God. Yeah, that's not remotely true. In fact, the undeniable fact of evolution has largely done away with any need to claim God is real at all. It's why, as I pointed out, most of the people on their list of experts are always pre-Darwin and certainly pre-modern science. That one single discovery has decimated any reason to take the claims of the Bible seriously. Now, it's not the only one, of course. Modern cosmology has shown that there's no reason at all to believe in a magical creator. And as we move forward, I think that the evidence will only increase for a wholly naturalistic world. They do list a couple of modern scientists, but if you notice, most of them keep science at one end of their professional work and religion as far away from it as they can. They aren't talking about how God did things, because if they did, they'd be out of a job. So, on to number 2, appreciating the role of religion in society. They say, there is an immense difference between the atheist who believes religion is bad for society and the atheist who believes it is beneficial. Both may personally find religion preposterous, but the latter is far better disposed to religion than the former. And sorry, I fall into the religion is bad for society camp. And it's bizarre how the minds of the religious operate with such an obvious fallacy. They state that without religion, things like science and Shakespeare, they wouldn't have existed. Well, how do they know that? This is yet another bald assertion on their part, and a bad one at that anything worthwhile can't exist without them. Now, sure, maybe the guy named Shakespeare may not have written plays without religion. But that doesn't mean that someone else wouldn't have done the same thing without religion, because that's what people do. It doesn't mean people wouldn't have built beautiful buildings if religion hadn't existed. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't have established centers for learning if religion had never been taken seriously. The idea that if it didn't happen exactly the way that it did, then it wouldn't have happened at all, that's just stupid. Number 3 says the preconversion. Now, the author goes on to say, this is the critical turning point. It's where genuine doubts about atheism begin to emerge. It's what I call preconversion. It's the first effectual challenge to the atheist, naturalist, materialist worldview. Okay, now what do you base that challenge on? Because naturalism isn't a worldview. It's a conclusion based on the evidence. Now, I've said this before, but we don't believe in the natural world as a matter of faith. We do so because it's the only thing that we have any evidence for. If you could present proof for the supernatural or even provide a demonstrable definition for what it is, then we would accept that the supernatural, whatever that happens to be, was real. When do you think you'll be doing that? They say the challenge to atheism must come from within the atheist's own belief system. How do you propose to do that without providing any objectively verifiable evidence for your God? Then he goes through a bunch of emotionally laden examples of people who were supposedly atheists, and then through emotional discomfort with reality, embrace the idea that there's an imaginary man in the sky. Most atheists are simply not concerned with how reality makes them feel. They only care about what can be demonstrated to be true objectively. All of the emotional appeals in the world won't convince me to believe in your magical father figure in the clouds. And that's why the religious make a distinction between atheists who believe religion is bad or who demand evidence or anything like that, and atheists who don't think about it that hard and are willing to listen to an emotional appeal. They don't want to talk to the first group because they have nothing that will convince them. They only want to preach to the second group, dishonestly, because it's the only group they have any hope in hell with, and it's really kind of sad when you think about it. On to point 4, which is beauty and apologetics. In other words, look at the trees! It is yet another emotionally based claim made by the religious that doesn't stand up to any level of intellectual scrutiny. Are there beautiful things out there? Absolutely. But beauty is subjective, and they have never even tried to prove a correlation between beauty and their imaginary friend. It's just a claim, and they have nothing at all to back that claim up with. I can just as easily say that things are beautiful, and therefore that means that invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies made it all. Are you going to believe me? You shouldn't, any more than you should believe the claim that beautiful things prove God is real. You have to do a lot better than that. The only way you can correlate two things is to prove that those two things exist and that one demonstrably caused the other, or was caused by the other, or somehow interrelates with the other. Just saying that it does isn't an argument. It's a claim, and claims need proof, and they have none. He goes on to say, likewise, the importance of apologetics cannot be overstated. Former atheists invariably credit some kind of apologetical work or argument as essential to their conversion. And that really means nothing. You aren't going to change your mind to any position, religious or not, if you've never been introduced to that position to begin with. It's like saying, I would never have discovered my favorite food if nobody had ever given me some and said, try this. That's not really that impressive. And of course, the whole point of this article is to tell people how quote-unquote hard atheists convert to Christianity, and then he says that hard atheists don't. They have to become soft atheists first. So the whole article is asinine in the first place, but most quote-unquote hard atheists that I'm aware of, and I really don't know that that term has any meaning, so maybe we'll call them skeptical atheists instead, but they aren't going to become soft or non-skeptical without any reason to do so. What the religious are really looking for are idiots. People who they can fool with their emotional diatribes and irrational claims, and who won't ask a lot of questions. Skeptical atheists are not those people. We expect evidence. We expect them to back up their claims, and they simply can't do it. If you look at supposed atheist conversion stories, you never find one that reports being convinced by the evidence. It doesn't happen because there is no evidence. It's always an emotional conversion, when the so-called atheist is at their lowest and gets preyed upon by the religious zealots. It's never the skeptics. It's never the people who expect proof before they accept an idea. It is, as always, the lowest of the low-hanging fruit that gives in. That's why 93% of the National Academy of Scientists are atheists. And you don't see the religious trying to convert them. Why? Because those people aren't stupid, gullible, or overly emotional. They demand evidence, and the religious don't have any. And so long as the religious don't have any, they are doomed to fail. The number of skeptics in the world is going up, and the number of theists out there is going down. They just can't bring in the gullible masses anymore in large enough numbers to replace those they're losing. People are getting too smart for religion. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing.